When you think of the worst criminals in America, what comes to mind? Gang leaders, drug dealers, corrupt politicians, people who've committed horrible crimes like murder or sexual assault. But what if I told you there was a time when over 120,000 people were locked up in American prisons without charge or trial, not because they'd committed crimes, but simply because of who they were? This is the story of the Japanese Americans who were interned during World War II, a shameful chapter in American history that reveals the dark side of wartime fear. On December 7th, 1941, the Japanese military attacked the U.S. naval base at Pearl Harbor in Hawaii. The surprise attack caught the Americans off guard and resulted in over 2,400 deaths. It was a pivotal moment in history that would change the course of World War II. In the aftermath of this devastating attack, fear and anger swept across the country. And as the United States prepared to enter World War II, a wave of anti-Japanese sentiment began to rise. This wasn't the first time such prejudice had taken hold. During the early days of the war, the U.S. government had already begun restricting the rights of German and Italian immigrants and those of Jewish faith, viewing them as potential threats. But the attack on Pearl Harbor intensified these fears and turned them towards the Japanese community. Executive Order 9266 was signed by President Franklin Delano Roosevelt on February 19, 1942. This order gave the military authority to establish military areas and to remove people from them. Using this executive order as a tool, the U.S. government began to forcibly remove Japanese Americans from their homes on the West Coast. Over the next 3 years, more than 120,000 people, two-thirds of them U.S. citizens, were sent to isolated internment camps located across the interior of the country. They were forced to abandon their homes and businesses, leaving behind everything that was familiar to them. These internments were based solely on the assumption that Japanese ancestry meant disloyalty to the United States. This policy advisor argued for a mass removal of Japanese Americans from the West Coast states, stating, "The fact that no sabotage has yet been discovered does not mean that it may not develop in the future. The one certain way to prevent it would be the removal of all persons of Japanese ancestry." This sentiment was echoed by many others at the time, including the editor of a prominent San Francisco newspaper, who stated, "We have no Japanese problem in this country today, except as a matter of having too many of them here." In response to the internment, Fred T. Korematsu refused to leave his home in San Francisco's Chinatown. In 1944, the U.S. Supreme Court ruled in the case Korematsu versus United States that the forced removal of Japanese Americans was indeed constitutional, stating that in time of war, the government's power to protect the nation is at its zenith. However, after the war ended, the treatment of Japanese Americans began to shift. In 1945, President Truman issued an executive order closing the internment camps. By 1965, most of the internees had returned to the West Coast, but they continued to face discrimination and were denied the right to vote in some states. It wasn't until 1988 that the U.S. government formally apologized for the internment and paid out reparations to the surviving internees. The apology and compensation were a significant step towards acknowledging the injustice that had been done to this community. The internment of Japanese Americans during World War II is a stark reminder of the dangers of unchecked fear and prejudice. It's a testament to the importance of standing up for what is right, even in the face of overwhelming opposition. The courage of individuals like Fred T. Korematsu, who refused to be silenced or relocated, played a pivotal role in eventually bringing about justice for Japanese Americans everywhere. And that's all we have for today. If you enjoyed this video, please remember to like and subscribe for more content. Until next time.